Emerson Champaign. Each one of these students won a state platinum seal award. Please join me in celebrating their accomplishments. And thank you, Principal Mrs. Horner, for helping. So next up, we're going to recognize 3 Carver Center Destination Imagination teams going to global finals. So if you're a Carver Center Destination Imagination, if you're a DI team member, Miss Anaskavich is helping. She's going to help you guys make it to the front. Go ahead and join the board on stage. So a little bit about these students. So these teams are 4th grade Depths of Space team, who won 3rd place and is advancing to the Global Finals tournament. The 5th grade Gifted Gamers team, who placed 2nd and is advancing to the Global Finals tournament. And the 6th grade season Spinners team, who received a wild card and is advancing to the Global Finals tournament. These students are Charlie Pugh, Mia Harris, Quinn Harding, Madiath Cruz, Aiden Oliver, Rob Dolan, Mason Gabar, Jalen Stewart, Ian Lee, Carolyn Ortiz, Emma Smith, Evan Brown, Stevie Marston, and Lexi Bridges. Also, Cage Pugh, Sawyer Dallagher, Carson Gist, Kaylee Bilta, Ethan Harris, Hannah Stromberg, and Cameron Dobson. Let's give them one more time a round. They're coached by Crystal Anaskavich, who's been helping here, and principal is Stephanie Carnett. So next, we're going to recognize General Franks Elementary Green Team to the stage. So while they're arriving, this is the Green Team: Andrea Molinar, Stormy Guzman, Bailey Payne, Abriella Ramos, Lauren Ikpuro, Isiosa, I knew I would get this, Irmonte, and Trinity Cartwright. They were awarded the Texas Elementary School of the Year, National School of the Year, and Exemplary Community Education Project from the National Energy Education Development. That's the NEED project. Let's give these young ladies a round of applause. Thank you, board members. That concludes our recognitions. Principal at Franks is Andrew Jones, so thank you, Ms. Jones, for your work.
Yes, thank you guys for being here tonight, and thank you for all the work for you kids, for you parents, for you teachers, and the principals and administrative staff of those 3 schools. We really do want to say thank you, and we see the great work that's going on in the elementary schools and in ISD. The time is now 5:38, and we will go to public forum. And we have several people that have asked to speak during the agenda item, and so I will just pull you. And so these are just kind of in not any particular order, but first off will be Kristen Vasquez, and her topic is item 7C. And we will be speaking on this later, so if you would rather wait, you can do that.
I can speak now, that's fine. Good evening. I reached out to the board on Thursday when I first read the agenda on 7C to express my concern and my disapproval of the item. And as of today, I have only gotten acknowledged from Mr. Trischetti, Mr. Booker, and Mr. Davis that I sent an email. And I have to say, at first I was kind of steamed that I didn't get a response from everyone, but it kind of proved my point. So I can't guarantee when I send you guys an email that you're actually going to click on it and read it. But what I can guarantee is that when I sign up for public forum, that you're going to give me my 3 minutes and you're going to listen to me. Regardless if you agree with me, disagree with me, or just are indifferent, you're going to give me my 3 minutes. And unfortunately, you have board members that sit on that stage every month that don't respond to emails. I've emailed the board for about 4 years now because I've been pretty faithfully attending meetings that long. And there's some board members that have never responded to my emails. And I'm concerned that it even made it as far as the agenda, that the policy committee looked at it and said, hey, this is a great idea and we should put it on here. That's concerning because, to be honest, it doesn't really match the image that we're trying to show with our new leadership and show that we're a district that wants feedback. And I'm not talking about feedback of here's your approved items that you can talk about, but genuine feedback. There's no minutes for that there's no agenda or minutes from the policy committee meeting on June 21st. I couldn't find that on the website anywhere, so that's a little concerning as well. I understand that we need to focus our attention on academics. I mean, we send our kids to school to be educated. But even though we want to focus on academics and we feel that by controlling the narrative of here's your approved items to talk about, that we would be controlling the negative that's coming in, we're also controlling the positive. So Mr. McAfee can't get up here and talk about how awesome our district is doing and how awesome our teachers are. Mr. Wimberly can't get up here and brag about how amazing his debate team is and how wonderful they're doing. The debate team can't come up here and practice their public speaking skills with all of their debates. I can't come up here and talk about how amazing my kid's third grade teacher was and how Miss Oberman my son's gonna think about Miss Oberman for the rest of his life because she made such a positive impact. So even though we're stopping negative fodder from coming up here, we're also stopping positive. And I feel like we would want more positive coming up to public forum as is. I think it's wrong, and I think that it shouldn't even have made it as far as the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vasquez. The next speaker I have listed that would like to speak at the current time is Daisy Navarez. Daisy, welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Good evening. Well, here we are again. The podium at a governmental meeting is considered a designated public forum, meaning a piece of property that has been purposely set aside for expressive use, regardless of whether property is formed by tradition or designation. The government cannot pick and choose among viewpoints. Once the property is open for the opinion, it must be open on equal terms to all. With that said, you as a school board have put yourselves in a position by your own doing in which you have been voted and elected to represent your communities. With that in mind, public schools are run, as the name implies, by the public. The elected position in which the public put you there for, with understanding that you would listen to the community input, did not go out the window once you got in that position. Did you really think the community was not going to come to an open forum and criticize your job performance or tell you what a great job or bad job you're doing? If you were to look at the definition of what the school board is, you will be getting the following: a local board of authority responsible for the provision and maintenance of schools. The school board's primary responsibilities are to a typical school board meeting will include many business items such as approaching the school calendar, adopting curriculum, overseeing construction, and providing and approving contracts with outside vendors. So we have to ask, why do you continue to overstep? You attempt to teach our children about history, example, changing the school name. It is not your job, or has it ever been, to teach our children right from wrong. What is your job as parents? That is ours. And history is also not your job. That is our teachers who have a degree and get paid for the job. Not to mention Governor Abbott said in Texas, critical race theory is illegal. It is your job to recognize the wrong you have done to our community and children and immediately reinstate the official name of what our school has always been known for, Midland Rebels. I bring this up because you are acting as cruel and oppressive rulers. Your teaching has left our children with a system of ideal and ideals, especially one which forms basis of political theory and policy, leading them to believe their vote doesn't matter. It is time you step up or step down. Mr. Davis, you seem to think that this is a thankless job. Then go ahead and step down. Our children deserve better. Ms. Ramsey, I know you're new to Texas, from what it seems like, but this is not the place to California. We are a community that love, that give, that scratch each other's backs. And I get it. You're there. We criticize. We ask. But it is not your job to teach our children. And yes, we're never going to give up on Midland Rebels. It's never going to happen, because in this place, Where we stand is America. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Navarez. The next speaker is Jennifer Carpenter. Her topic also is BED local.
Thank you. Dr. Ramsey, Board President Murray, and other board members, I come to you this evening like I did several years ago for the first time. I was nervous and I had something that needed to be addressed. I came to the then board with the information and survey results pertaining to the culture for many of our teachers. I was a mom who hadn't really had any issues with the district, but I had friends who were teachers and who had voiced their feelings about what they were experiencing culture-wise. This led to a passion to help create a better environment for not only our teachers, but students, parents, and volunteers. My experience communicating with the school board has not always been a positive one. I have sent numerous emails in the past to only receive 1, 2, maybe 3 replies, often to be dismissed because in the private setting of an email, no response became a norm for several board members. Those that respond know who they are. Mr. Murray has always been very genuine with his responses to me. Mr. Bishop and Mr. Tuschetti have also been responsive. I haven't really reached out to the board, the new board members, so I don't really have any experiences to compare that to. That being said, if I had not had the opportunity to speak in public forum about something not on the agenda, we wouldn't have had made some progress to help improve culture. The district attempted to place comment boxes on campuses. This wasn't ideal with how they did it, but it was an effort and a step in the right direction. There's now a third-party exit interview for staff members that choose to resign to help provide feedback to central office with ways to improve and also where they excel. I was able to present a culture board idea to our previous superintendent. Many community members, parents, teachers, and students have used this forum to speak out on things they feel passionate about, to shout out praises for things done well, to offer help and say, we're here, what can we do? Maybe sometimes it doesn't go with the agenda, but that's okay. That's what provides the open door policy, the ability to share and present things to our board as a whole that otherwise wouldn't normally get as much response. I've experienced this as a parent with the grievance process as well. It's made to be an obstacle to follow the chain in many instances. It's unfair to restrict those that want to speak up. Many others have stood behind this podium coming to you with praises, concerns, suggestions, and more. Why? Then why censor that? If we aren't able to speak during public comments, then when? When do we, the community, have a chance to speak before you as a whole? It's creating an unnecessary distance that was already too far to begin with. This is me reminding you to listen to your constituents. You are a representation, volunteer or not, this is part of your job. You wanted to improve things in this district. Attempting to silence those who might be considered a loud voice is unacceptable. You don't get to pick and choose which issues to address. Sweeping under the rug hasn't gotten us anywhere in the past. Please don't choose to restrict those of us willing to speak up, good or bad. If we don't have this opportunity, it will just put more strain on the relationships you're trying to build within our community. Any ground you've gained since the bond and name change will be damaged. This district was barely over halfway enrolled for next year. Families are making other decisions for their education choices because of decisions like this one. As a parent, I feel we need to set the example so that my boys know that they can come to me for anything. If I restrict that conversation, I'll lose that level of trust and that honest communication. The public taxpayers have a right to participate in their public school board meetings, just like I have the right to vote and have the right to educate my children with any background. I have the right to participate in the public school board meetings. You know it and I know it. You need to do the right thing, vote based on what you know is right and morally sound, not based on this new information from Austin. It doesn't sound like it'll give us due process since often board meetings are the last resort for many. Please consider that. Please think further than taking an extra 30 minutes max on an average during a board meeting. It's so much more than that for those of us on this side of the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. The next person that would like to speak on 7C BED is Matt Galindo. Mr. Galindo. Welcome, Mr. Galindo.
Thank you and good evening. I've been very hesitant to address the board after the race for one reason, and really it's to avoid looking petty. But after this issue that can you not hear me? Okay. All right, after the issue, after Ms. Vasquez sent me the agenda item, it was very concerning. It was concerning for a lot of reasons. One being the fact that I ran a campaign alongside a few of you, and our message was simple and it was clear. It was represent the vision and the values of the community and listen to the taxpayers. What happened to that only a few months ago? What's even more disturbing is that when you look at the policy committee that approved this and they were able to put it on the agenda item. as an agenda item. And that's the one thing that I want folks to understand is on the MISD website, under the legal tab, you can find this. And it says, the role of the MISD Policy Committee is to review the district's recommendations for changes in the local board policy. After a recommendation policy change has been reviewed and is supported by the committee. One more time, is supported by the committee. The recommendation will be presented to the entire board at a public meeting. The 2021 MISD Policy Committee members include Board President Brian Murray, Board Trustee Secretary Katie Joyner, Board Trustee Michael Booker, Superintendent Angelica Ramsey, and General Counsel Sid Pounds. What happened? What changed? How do we go from saying, let's give people a voice, to completely shutting them down? This podium is being used so that we can advocate for kids, Dr. Ramsey, as we spoke in your office, for kids that grew up like you and I that don't have people in their lives to handle that. Michael, you know that. Mr. Murray, you know that. So how can we sit up here and try to push this along, and yet we sent a message for how many months last year to get to today? All I can say is I didn't see eye to eye with Orlando Riddick, but he didn't pull this. It's disappointing, but it's even more disappointing when you find out the 5 members of that committee and how it got here. What happened? So what, we don't have a voice now? So you take our money, you make the decisions for our children, and now you expect us to stay silent. It doesn't work that way, guys. And what we did was take 10 steps back from where we were at. I was all on board. I was pushing folks to get involved. Don't worry about it. It's going to get better. Now what do we tell them? So I want y'all to think about that. And if y'all can, Mr. Schetti, thank you for responding. Mr. Booker, thank you for your phone call. But the question is, now what? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glendo. The next speaker is Danielle Clements, and she wishes to speak on fencing and all the works of the district farm, at the district farm. Ms. Clements, thank you for being here tonight.
First, I would like to take the opportunity to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come visit at the school farm. Because it's not in town and right on campus, it most of the time gets overlooked. But we would like to we appreciate y'all coming to take a look and see. So thank you for the improvements that have been made. We have new restrooms that are clean and don't look like you're going to get an illness or sickness from sitting on them. Also, I would like to thank you for putting it in the I believe it's under the contracts, that we're going to be possibly getting a new fence out at the school farm. So this is a big deal because we have students that their parents won't let them go to the school farm by themselves. And as a teacher, that's concerning because that means that the animals get fed when the parents are available, not when the student's available. So thank you for putting that on the agenda and letting that be an option. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clements, for being here as well, and thank you for teaching our students. The next person, let's see, this one is for the agenda item, Dane Queller, and he would like to speak on item 7D. Mr. Queller, welcome, and thank you for being here tonight.
How are y'all guys? On December 1st, I was in an accident at the weight room at Lee. Oh, yeah. And after the accident at school in the weight room, I had to adjust to a new lifestyle. I was in severe pain on heavy medication. It was very, very difficult to sleep at night. For the first couple of weeks, I wasn't able to eat or drink anything cold or hot. The neck machine I was using that caused 3 of my teeth get knocked out, it wasn't the first time it has came out of the wall. The other accident occurred to a coach about a year or so ago. The bolt in the wall hit the coach in the eye, and they're still being used. Prior to the accident, the dentist that I've been using that's been giving operations on me, They've been very nice, and they've continued to do these operations without payments. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dane, for coming. The next one that would like to speak on the same topic of 7D is Renee Queller. Mr. Queller, thank you for coming tonight.
Appreciate you all. Appreciate your attention with this situation that happened. That's my son, and what it's hard to hear him, but what happened is he was using a neck machine in the Lee weight room. It was installed improperly, came out, shot out, busted his teeth, got into his gums, shattered teeth. By the grace of the good Lord, he's not dead. 2 inches higher in that eye that came out was about 3 inches long, and I think y'all seen the pictures, could have hit him in his eye. And we wouldn't have our boy anymore. I'll take those broken teeth, but we still got our boy. Thank God for that. And I know y'all are going to do the right thing for him. It's no fault of his own. It was just not the way it needed to be installed. So that being said, we understand that. Let's take care of him. Let's do the right thing. Let's do the right thing for everybody here. We trust y'all with our kids. We stand behind you. We disagree with you, but yet we've got a kid that needs our help. He's just turned 19 today. And I remember he couldn't eat. His prom, he missed football games. He's a football player. He couldn't do anything because of the pain. He still has headaches. He doesn't deserve that. None of y'all caused it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying from our hearts, let's do the right thing for him. We're at $27,000 in dental bills right now. And he's got to live with it for the rest of his life. He had to endure them putting screws up in his upper jaw and his lower jaw. Now, like he said, it happened a year before to a coach. And another disturbing thing that we need to rectify is when it happened to him, the coaches continued to let the kids use the device that was in the wall. They told the kids to turn around so it wouldn't hit him in the face. We can't have that. We can't have that. Our children are precious. Our children are everything. This is why we have a school board. We are adults. We got to protect our kiddos, and I know y'all will do the right thing for them. We love our kids. They're our responsibility. Now they're seeing how adults handle and take care of each other. It's what we're about here in America. This is who we are. And I know y'all will do the right thing. And I appreciate y'all listening. But that's a real young man right there who's got to contend with something for the rest of his life. You all have children. And I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm just saying, as parents, as human beings, let's do the right thing for him. For him. And I know y'all will. And I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your faces. And I can see how diligent you are listening to us. Thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart. He's had to contend with a lot. But again, thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Queller, and Dane, happy birthday. Good things always happen when it rains, remember that. That concludes public forum. We have two other people that would sign up to speak, but they wanted to speak at the agenda item time. And so at this time, we will, it is now 5:59, and we will move to the public hearing to discuss the 2021-2022 budget and proposed tax rate. Mr. Dodds, welcome to the podium.
Thank you, President. Mr. Murray, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Dr. Ramsey. As we enter the public hearing for the budget and tax rate for the school year 2021-2022, we did post the ad for the public hearing. It was published on June 18th of 2021 in the Midland Reporter Telegram for this board meeting on June 28th. As you can see, our team has gone down a little bit. We've had a few that have moved on to other districts. We wish them well. I want to say thank you to Carla Martin, who's had to bear the brunt of putting a lot of this together, and she's done an excellent job. As we move into our presentation, you'll see the board goals, and as we go through the budget is a pathway to meet those board goals. And so that supports all of our teaching and learning and what they will be doing for our students next year. And we want to make sure, we've had many meetings over the last year on how this budget can support and make sure what we're doing in academics to reach the board goals and do what's right for our students. On our budget highlights, our current budget highlights, you'll see where we started with the original budget at $396 million. The last budget amendment was in March that increased the budget to $431 million. And in our estimated final for June at $432,718,445. As you see the expenditures, that equals that. We are looking at what we need to do for the final budget amendment, and that will be later on in the meeting. This highlight right here replicates what that final budget amendment will do. And as we go into our proposed budget for 21-22 school year, historical values, in 1920 our values were $35 billion. They increased in this current year to $36.2 billion. And in our proposed budget for next year, our values will be decreasing to, right now, all we have is the April estimate, and that is at $31.9 billion. You will notice that all of our budget, of course, is on estimates. We don't have our certified values until July 25th. We won't be really discussing the tax rate because what we're proposing at this point, we will not know after we get our certified values. And then once we get our certified values, then we will set the tax rate at that time. Our M&O collections will be going from $340 million this year, but due to the values decreasing, we'll go down to $292.7 million. We're estimating a tax collection rate of 98.5. Our ADA is based off 23,373.93, and our recapture at $101,869,206. The next slide is based our property value trend, and the green bar is what our early estimate, which is our April estimate, is. Our July certified values have always seemed to be a little bit higher than what the early estimate is, as it's predicted in April. And then our October tax roll certification pretty much stays with what our certified values were in July. As we look at the tax rate trends, we are estimating that our tax rate for this next year will be 95.34, which is a compressed rate. When the legislature went into session this year, they felt like that they would not compress the rate from our current year, which is at 95.64. But the values in the state did come up more than what they thought. So under House Bill 3, as it approved in 1920, it has a compression anytime the state values increase over a certain amount. Even though our values here are going down, our tax rate will compress, estimated to 95.34. And then our IRS rate, we're estimating at 7.02 cents for a total tax rate of $1.236. And these are our trends on our average daily attendance over the last couple of years. You can see our current number of students is 23,245. That's actually the adjusted ESSER, hold harmless number. We were being paid this year on 24,471, but once they are starting to adjust it with ESSER 2, a lot like ESSER 1. So we have to lower the number of students, average daily attendance, in order to reduce our revenue, which increases our recapture, but that's that number that comes to once we get through. And then we're estimating our attendance for this next year at 23,373.94. Since Midland ISD went into a recapture district, this here is the slide that shows how much we paid in recapture and estimated payments of recapture. That total for ending the 21-22 year would be $638 million since we have started recapture in school year 13-14. Our revenue sources for this budget, 78% of our revenue comes from our property values, our taxpayers, at $292 million. Our state revenue is roughly $72.9 million, and then our federal monies is $1.6 million, and then our TRS on behalf is $9,464,000, which is essentially a wash in the budget because we'll have the exact same expenditures as that number is revenue. As we get into our state revenues, you can see the formula transition grant is really our biggest state revenue at this point in time at $60,201,000. Our available school fund, which all school districts receive that, is $4,894,000, and then our partnership 1882 revenue is $7,852,000. And this is just a breakdown of how our expenditures are for our proposed budget. The Chapter 49 payment actually skews how much actually goes into instruction, which when it's all in there, 41.75% goes to instruction, but 26.75% goes to recapture out of our total budget. And then this is our 3 proposed budgets that needs to be approved by the board tonight. Our general fund, which is a total revenue of $380,837,032, with the lacked expenditures of the same amount, so a balanced budget of $380,837,032. We also have the food service budget, which has revenues of $13,897,747 and expenditures of $15,897,747, which will be a $2 million deficit. And the reason we're doing that is because the fund balance in that has to be reduced, and so that's why we are going into fund balance in order to bring that down to where it's supposed to be for the food service, which a lot of it will be going to the increased salaries. We're doing some capital projects in the cafeterias, and so that's where that money's going. And then our debt service is The total budget is $21,588,629, with the expenditures and payments and interest for our debt service at $21,588,629. And that is our proposed budget. Are there any questions?
Any questions, board? Well, Mr. Dodds, I want to ask you one question. If you will go back to slide 5, because I think this is worth making a point about. When we talk about the federal government giving us money and how the state operates, could you elaborate on the last line, recapture, ESSER adjusted, and why that our Chapter 49 payment jumped in this
Sure.
last month?
Sure. And this is just an estimate, but this is what we're estimating will happen. The state is actually using our ESSER 2 funds, which we receive about $15 million, and they will reduce our state funding, which the only way to reduce our state funding is to lower our average daily attendance. Since we are a recapture district, that doesn't just lower our state revenue, it increases our recapture. And so it'll be somewhere around a difference of about $13.4 million that we will reduce formula transition grant and increase recapture in order to pay for the hold harmless that the state allowed us to have for this year. So, you know, at the first of the year when we were excited about our hold harmless and thinking that was the state would pay for that, that's not really what happens. It's sort of like last year when they used ESSER 1 funds in order to pay for the hold harmless. And so that is our estimate right now. It increases our recapture. You know, we began the year at about $118 million estimate for recapture. Once our values came in and we started adjusting at that, then that increased our recapture. And we were up to about $143 million, but with the ESSER, or with the hold harmless that we're going to have to pay for, that will increase it to $156 million.
Thank you, Mr. Dodds. I think it's important to note that because of the fact that our federal government gave us money to help us out with COVID relief, to make up for some of the losses we've had with missing school and not being full-time. And yet our state government felt it was right to take uncork the bottom and pull off some funds so that they could keep it at the state. And so we're basically getting the same money and sending more money to them.
Correct.
And I think it's important to this crowd to know, and anybody listening online, that 2024, 2025, that hold harmless fund grant for us goes away. And so right now is when we need to start talking to our state legislators, because it's going to be a real problem for us, because we're going to have major deficits. And if we don't get someone that will listen to what's going on in West Texas or in the high property values of Dallas or Austin or Houston or other areas, it's a big deal. And it's going to make our students suffer whenever we're not being able to keep our own money here and send it off more and more, because they find ways to take our money, our state education money, and move it toward other things in the state budget. So I appreciate that. If there's no other questions, then I will note the time is now 6:14, and the public hearing for the 2021-2022 budget and proposed tax rate will end. Thank you, Mr. Dodds.
All right, thank y'all.
Fellow trustees, the next item on the agenda is item 5, consent agenda. Item A, board meeting minutes. Item B, monthly financials. Item C, final 2020-2021 budget amendment. Item D, contracts over $100,000. Item E, requests for qualifications. RFQ 20-78, special education professional services. Item F, request for proposal, RFP 20-73, Midland ISD Online Application Management System. Item G, request for proposal, RFP 20-35, on-call electrical maintenance services. Item H, request for proposal, RFP 20-69, copier service program. Item I, personnel appointments. Item J, compensatory education home instruction waiver. Item K, CPR instruction waiver. And item L, certification of cybersecurity training completion. Board, is there any reason we should pull any of these items for consent?
Can we pull H?
Mr. Trischetti has requested that we pull item H. Do I hear any others? Then all items A through G and I through L will be deemed approved by consent. Mr. Trischetti, your question on item H.
There had been some question about this specific bid. For whatever reason, I just would like, just for the entire board to have a little bit of color. I had spoken with Dr. Ramsey and with Kelly, who I don't see, but just kind of that this is a big, we do a lot of copying in the district. And so it was one that was certainly being looked at, but just wanted to make sure that people understood how that process was and there was a committee and that that it was done, what we feel like is, as, chime in.
Dr. Ramsey, would you
Yeah.
address?
We'll invite staff to come up that worked on the process, but while she does, yes, this is a very large RFP. It was split because our print shop was still under contract, and so it was a little more complicated than a normal RFP, but I'll go ahead and defer.
Good afternoon, Haiti Peña, Purchasing Director. Good evening, board members, superintendent, and council. How may I help you?
Just to Dr. Ramsey's point, it was a little bit more complicated because the print shop, while a part of the bid, still had some life left, and there were things a part of the print shop specifically that were separate than from, say, a copier at an elementary school. Right.
Yes, so the print shop machines are totally different from a campus. They're more specialized, they are bigger, they have more volume. We did not decide not to award in this bid because the cost to buy out those bids is very costly to the district. But we still wanted to see and compare some of the pricing that some of the bidders would go ahead and provide to us just for transparency purposes.
It is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you for being
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is item 6, district reports. They are report only. A, superintendent update. B, innovation update. C, operations update. D, financial update. And E, staffing update. I'm not aware of any of these being pulled, but board, would you like any questions before we move on? Hearing none, we will move on to item C, discussion and action items. The first item is A, academic update and board goals for Lone Star Governance Board pre-K board goals. Ms. Amaya, Ms. Warren. Thank you, Ms. Amaya. I didn't know who was going to present first. Thank you.
It's me. Good evening, Board President Murray, Board of Trustees, Dr. Ramsey. Tonight I'm presenting an update on Goal Progress Measure 1.1 and 3.2. I'm just waiting for it to come up. All right. So Goal Progress Measure 1.1 asks for the percentage of pre-K students producing at least 40 letter sounds and standards-based assessment, and it will be at least at an 86% by the end of the year. Goal progress measure number 3.2, the percentage of pre-K students scoring proficient on a math standards-based assessment will be at least 91% by the end of the year. So 91% of pre-K students will be proficient in math. This chart shows you the progression from the beginning of the school year. The lighter blue shows the letter sounds, and that 7% of our students, when we started school, were able to produce 40 or more letter sounds. By the middle of the year, we had increased to 49%. And when we took this data in April, we were at 78% of pre-K students producing at least 40 letter sounds. On the math side, we started with 22% of our students being proficient at the beginning of the school year. We moved to a 66% by the middle of the year, and we ended in April with 91% of our pre-K students being able to or being proficient on math skills. As you can see, sadly, we did not meet our literacy goal, or the 40, the students mastering 40 or producing 40 letter sounds. But we really actually, without making it sound as an excuse, with everything that we faced this year, we saw significant progress across campuses, and 71 percentage points progress from beginning to end. I don't know about you, but it really is hard to produce. So our teachers, our principals, our students our parents really worked diligently to get there. Math, on the other hand, we did meet it, and so I'd like to talk about a couple of items. So when we look at every campus, we did pull every campus for the reading goal, and then we also pulled the math goal. And in both instances, again, we see significant progress. Do you want to move on to it? So there's some facts and some factors that I'd like to discuss, and the first one being that the collection of end-of-the-year data was done in April. We still had a full month of instruction, so that's something to consider. And we also included only schools in our partnerships, our 1882 campuses, that use the same assessment instrument. So there was one bunch. So there were 3 campuses that we couldn't report because they don't use the same assessment instrument. Again, every campus experienced statistically significant growth, and students experienced growth despite everything, attendance concerns, online learning, and such. So this is one of many assessments, again, and not an overall view of the child's learning. That's just one piece. So our next steps, although we recognize the amount of growth our students have made, we acknowledge that the areas of growth needed to meet goals. So like I said, we will dig deep into the data, especially looking at the end result of May. We also will look at creative ways to encourage print awareness and reading. Pre-K does send summer pack reading for every student at the end of the school year. And we have professional development and a new curriculum adoption that we will be starting this year. And we also just remind that pre-K is a foundation, grade level, meaning some of the same skills will be revisited in kindergarten. Again, we're encouraging families to apply for pre-K through Apply Midland. Do you have any questions for me?
I have one question. I'm very encouraged by these results. Congratulations to all that worked so hard to achieve them, students and parents alike. My only question is, why was the collection of end-of-year data in April rather than the end of the year?
I will try my best to answer this question, but so we do have that calendar that guides us in terms of when it's pulling data. is not as simple as we might think, so it does take time. And we always going to be ahead of the game, so that may something that we can change. I know that as I was working with principals on the other goal progress measures, I mean, they were asking for to the last minute, and we also pulled some of that in April. So I don't have a very good response for you, because I don't control that, but that is something that we should definitely look at.
President Murray, if I may, while I wasn't here when the assessment calendar was created, it typically moves up because STAR testing starts in May, and kind of it's an all hands on deck, and especially at the elementary schools. And so that's typically why the assessment calendar for non-STAR exams happens earlier, and it happens in April.
All right, if there are no other questions.
I want
Yes.
to address one thing, Ms. Maya.
Yes, sir.
And while I totally appreciate the fact that we went from 7% to 78% in our letter sounds, and I realize a lot of this has to happen with kids coming into school having a little bit of background, and so that's where we're trying to recover from. In your opinion, do you think us only being at 78 as opposed to 86 is going to affect us down the line, where we're going to have to catch up? I know we're playing a big catch up with a lot of the other things because of the missed time, but is that part of it also, is the missed time? And
That could be part of the reason, but to answer your question, I think that it is what we do with the data that we have is really the most important thing. So we can look at early on, looking at where we ended, and certainly we know that next year we're going to have to target and focus and be super intentional on looking at data and what it tells us, and continuing to assess and reteach and reassess. So that's a cycle that I know Dr. Ramsey has in her plan. And I think that most definitely can reach our goal. And as kinders, we will have a lot to work with for the kiddos who are moving up into pre-K. It's a little more challenging with kinders who are coming in new to the school setting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Trischetti?
I move to accept the information in the academic update report for goal progress measure 1.1 and 3.2.
We have a motion by Mr. Trischetti, a second by Mr. Booker. All in favor, please raise your right hand. The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Maya.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 7B, policy update, DNA local. Mr. Pounds.
Thank you, President Murray. Board of Trustees, this is a recommended policy change to DNA local. It relates to the performance appraisals of teachers. Our current policy allows certain teachers that meet state and local requirements to be appraised on a less than annual basis. Because of our implementation of the TIA program, the Teacher Incentive Allotment, we believe it's in the best interest of the district to appraise everyone annually. This was our policy back in 2017, so it would be a return to that. And so that's what the change is. Every teacher would be appraised annually. And so any teacher that's eligible for TIA would need that appraisal annually, so it would help in that effort. So if you have any questions.
Any questions, board? Do I hear a motion? Motion by Mr. Davis. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Trischetti. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 7C, policy update, BED local. Mr. Pounds. Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I'm sorry. Mr. Hinojos has asked to speak at this time, and so I would call him to the podium for his discussion. Sorry about that, Mr. Hinojos. I apologize.
Sure you are. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
So the last time I spoke with you,
I was able to talk about good things that were happening in the district. I went from technology department to the athletic department to MISD police, special education services. And so that's one of the things I'm concerned about is if you eliminate the public discussion, as Ms. Vasquez mentioned, we won't be able to talk about things I think should be on the record, and we should praise members of the district and, things that y'all are supporting. So that's one of my big concerns is not being able to illustrate like what's going on in the district. Some stuff you may not even know that's going on just because there's so many moving parts. Also to, give kudos to all the people, in central office that are doing a lot of hard work and doing good stuff. So that's one issue that I'm concerned about is not being able to give praise where it's deserved and recognizing initiatives that y'all are, that the district is in charge of. But I do understand also, I'm tired of people coming in, throwing hand grenades and then leaving, name changes, apartments, bonds, we got to move on, and that wastes a lot of time. But I'm also concerned with if you eliminate that, then where can we, speak to you as a body? So if it is the public discussion is taken away, I would be very adamant that y'all as a body address these questions before the school board meetings or after, or in the community gatherings that y'all have had when we're running for school board memberships, or in the superintendent search. We had a bunch of community gatherings where people were able to ask their questions and y'all were able to interact, because I can't stand during public discussion I talk and y'all just look at me, and you can't even. That's just the rules. I've spoken at the city, and it's the same thing. They don't. You can during public discussion you can talk to them, but they're not obligated to say anything, and I feel like that's it's nice to have the back and forth and the conversations. But I also understand. I'm also frustrated with just beating dead dogs, those topics that they just need to go away, and they just take away a lot of time. So those are probably the chunk of my concerns.
So this is a recommended policy change to BED local. It would limit public comment to only those items that are on the meeting agenda for regular meetings. It would align with our policy for special meetings, and basically all other meetings that we have, we limit public discussion to the items that are on the agenda. One thing I wanted to clarify is I know a few public commenters mentioned as far as not having the ability to bring up recognitions or bring up things like that to mention for the district. Most of the time, as you see on item 2 in our agenda today, that's going to be an item on the agenda, and so they would have the opportunity to bring those things up. And I just want to make clear that the committee's consideration and the reason this has been recommended to the board is to focus the board on the academic outcomes of the district, to focus the board on governing, and to limit all other things that the board doesn't need to be dealing with, that the district's administration needs to be dealing with. And so a lot of these comments and things like that can be directed to the district's administration and really shouldn't be always directed to the board. And that's part of governance, and it's especially part of Lone Star governance, which asks us to sort of eliminate everything we can and focus on academic outcomes. And so that was the root of this, and that's why it was brought to the committee, and that's why it's in front of the board today. So,
and Mr. State, I'm going to exert a little bit of privilege because I want to talk about this, because it was talked about earlier that I was on the policy committee as well as Mr. Booker and Katie Joyner that couldn't join us tonight. So I wanted to draw a couple of things out before we started the discussion, and it just kind of adds to what Mr. Pounds just said is this board is adamant about academics and focusing what we can do to make our academics stronger. So when this came to a policy committee, it wasn't that we said, let's approve this, let's move forward with this, let's get this in the front of the board to make a change. What it did allow was for us to have a discussion about that academics are important in this district, and we've got to focus on those academics. And so much like Mr. Hinojos just said, we've really got to focus on what we're doing, and so that was the thought process behind the committee, bringing it to the board. We can't have the discussion in private, whether I know what Mr. Davis or Mr. Trischetti or Mr. Bishop thinks, and so until we bring it up into this body, in this public meeting, we can't have that discussion. And so a lot of you think just because we put it on the agenda, that means, hey, this is getting passed tonight, we're getting approved, they're trying to take something away. No, in reality, what that means is we're trying to have a discussion. For one, we want the community to know how important academics are to us. Not that we're taking away any rights, but much like Mr. Pounds just said, Lone Star Governance tells us to eliminate everything we can that doesn't have to do with academics. And so you probably noticed over the course of time in the last 5 years, our agenda we've tried to draw it down. There's more things in consent, things that we can look at, we can ask questions about, things that are going to be made public to you at an earlier time than ever before, because we're trying to get that out to you. But we're trying to get those things out of the public discussion so that we can get to what matters. And so we want to talk about education. We want to talk about the great work our teachers are doing, the great work our staff is doing. There's a lot of good things happening in this agenda and the information in this agenda that are really important for you to see, because there's a big change happening in MISD starting July 1st. We're super excited about it. Dr. Ramsey, I talked to her 3 times over the weekend, maybe twice, maybe once by email. But we talked a couple of times over the weekend, and she is working night and day and weekend, Saturday, Sunday, to make this district, to take us where we need to be. And so there are good things happening. And so just because you see something on the agenda, we're not trying to limit rights. Mr. Glendo said it best. We all kind of went together and talked about listening to community and making wise decisions based on that. We've heard from you in this meeting, and I appreciate all the emails we received. When you can constructively present your opinion to us and tell us why you feel this way, that's great. It's much harder whenever the emails come in negative. I'm not saying we received any over this, but a lot of times we do receive emails, but still send them. You may not get the best response. You're going to get response if you ask a question and you want information. We're going to be as best as we can. And Dr. Ramsey is better than any I've ever seen as far as answering your email within 24 hours. And so a lot of times if you send an email to 7 people on the board and Dr. Ramsey, she's going to field it. It's not going to be us doing it. And so part of our discussion over the weekend was, well, she was going to send out an email, and she was doing great work with something that was totally more important and something that we're fixing to do in handling a deputy superintendent, that we didn't get that email out. And I said, well, let's don't send the email at this point. Let's have a discussion in the general meeting so that people understand our hearts and what we're looking at. And so that's really why we're here tonight and looking at this policy topic, is because much like Mr. Davis did when he was president, and what I'm trying to do is focus us on academics. And what can we do to spend more time talking about what goes on in the classroom and how we can improve, what Ms. Amaya just presented to us, how do we be better? And so that's what I'll have to say, and then I'll open it up to the board for discussion. Mr. Bishop.
If I may, I appreciate again the opportunity to speak to the public again, and I understand the motive behind the revision as far as our policy. However, I'm in favor of we leave it. This is just my opinion. I support leaving it as is, but maybe moving the agenda item before we go to executive session. I think it still gives the public the opportunity to speak on their behalf of what they have asked for. I support that. And also, For myself, I do offer once a quarter community meetings. If people say they're not being heard, there's an opportunity not only for my district, but anybody else that feel like they want to attend. I do post those out on my school, on my website, not the schools, but on my district page. So with that said, I understand what the committees are for, whether it's the policy committee or whether it's the facilities committee. It's all about a group of people meeting, three board members and then the rest of staff, to bring that for discussion to the whole board and to the public. So just because something's on the agenda, as you spoke of, doesn't necessarily mean something's going to pass or it's going to fail or even upset anybody for that matter. For the most part, not all the time, I answer emails. Depends on how those emails come at me. Depends on how I respond. But again, I'm in support of leaving it as is and then maybe moving it down on the agenda to give the public and the community the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
So, Mike, I have a question first, and that is, did the policy committee consisting of 3 board members recommend the board adopt these changes to local policy or not?
The committee did not recommend that we approve it. The committee recommended that we take the policy to the full board for discussion.
Okay. So, do any of the 2 board members that were on the policy committee, are they in favor of this? Either one of y'all?
No, not as it stands.
Okay. Mr. Cook? Okay. Well, I'm certainly not in favor of it. I think I do welcome the opportunity to talk about public forum, particularly items that aren't on the agenda. We get criticized for not responding to public comments regarding items that are not on the agenda that they nevertheless want to bring up. We get criticized for not responding, not engaging in discussion. The reason why we cannot engage in a discussion about a topic that's brought up to public forum that's not on the agenda is because the law says we cannot do so. The law says we cannot do so because the public has a right to know in advance of the meeting what board members are going to be discussing at the meeting. So if a topic is brought up at public forum that's not on the agenda and we sit there quietly and don't respond, it's because the law requires us to sit there quietly and not to respond. However, this alternative was to limit public forum to just agenda items. I don't know, I guess it was on there so we could discuss it, and it sounds like there's no support that I've heard to have it, and I agree. I think that it is the purpose of public forum. One of its purposes is to provide an opportunity for the community to tell us of their concerns, or tell us of their compliments, or tell us of their criticisms, or tell us of their complaints. And so, while there are some times where the time it takes to address non-agenda items can go on a while, I think for the most part it's been the times that public forum goes on, it's about an agenda item. So I think this is not a problem at MISD, and I think it would be a big problem if we were to change the policy to limit it to agenda items. And I think it would be completely contrary to the great work that Dr. Ramsey has done to engage this community, to engage stakeholders and get their input. So I'm glad to hear that I don't think there's any support for this, and I'm sorry that we caused a lot of consternation that we were considering adopting it when apparently we were never considering adopting it. So sorry for that, but I welcome the opportunity to talk about public forum and why we can't address non-agenda items. I'm grateful for that.
Brian, I have one quick segment and I'll be through. I guess one of the things I'd like to mention too, if there is an agenda item that someone's on the public forum to speak on, I think they ought to be able to speak on that when that agenda item rises. If that's the case, and if not, then my opinion, I think it needs to be on the end of the agenda.
Mr. Scuddy?
I echo Mr. Davis's sentiment that I'm sorry for the concern that was caused for the public. I completely understand why the committee made the decision it did and brought it to the board, trying to align with Lone Star governance and really keeping the main thing. But part of that for me that I'll always revert back to, and like Mr. Davis said, I welcome a discussion about public forum. But as many of the speakers said, we tend to beat dead dogs and throw grenades and walk away. And while we would love to limit that, as long as we are a taxing entity and a public, we have to provide our constituency, the public, a opportunity and a means and a mechanism with which to engage us. And yes, you can shoot an email, but you may not get the response, or you can stop us in the grocery store, which happens to any of those things. But regardless of any of those other things, that if you show up at a board meeting, that you can have 3 minutes, and whether it is the concern for a specific education issue or something that may not be as such, or a specific student, or honoring student, or whatever the case may be, that opportunity is there and preserved for our public, I think is of the utmost importance. So I will be voting against this item.
Point of clarification, there's nothing to vote on if no one makes a motion to change the policy, correct? Okay.
Mr. Triskey, just one point of clarification for me, just because you were involved with the city. When does the city hold public forum in their meetings, or Mr. Hinojos may be able to?
Yeah, City Council recently moved theirs to the end of their regular meeting. I will say, and I understand Mr. Bishop's point, I will say that City Council, though, does meet twice a month, and we only meet once, so that's one issue to consider, and they meet during the day. And we meet in the evenings, which can be more difficult if you have families. And I don't want to ever hamper a concerned mom or a PTA group or whoever, or anyone, whoever the case may be. If we go long, which we're trying to limit under Lone Star governance and not do that as much anymore, but if we go till 9 or 10, I don't want to feel like that we're limiting people they have to wait through the agenda to get through the end, whereas if you have to wait to the end of the agenda at a city council meeting, you're running into lunch. And so that can look different for us just because our meetings start in the evening. But they do public comment at the end of the regular meeting, and they meet twice a month during the day.
Mr. Brooker, anything?
Yes, sir. So I just want everyone to know that I was not pushing to. Can y'all hear me? I was not pushing to shut the community down and not hear their voices. What they said is it was brought to us. We wanted to bring it to the board to get their perspective of what they thought. When it was first presented to me, it sounded like a great idea. And we should keep the focus on our academics, but I didn't understand the perspective of the other side of it. So now that I've spoken to lots of community members, several of them today and yesterday, it's not a good idea to, I guess people were saying that I was trying to not allow people their freedom of speech, and that's not what my motive was of this at all. So us as a board, we need to hear the good and the bad of both sides of everything. So I will not vote to move this policy forward as well.
Do I hear a motion? Hearing no motion, item 7C dies. The next item is item 7D, resolution regarding student injury reimbursement. Oh, and before we go to Mr. Pounds, we have another public speaker, Catherine Queller. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for patiently waiting.
My name is Catherine Cuellar. My son Dane Cuellar is a recent 2021 graduate of Lee High School, and on the morning of December 1st, he suffered a severely traumatic injury to his mouth and teeth while using school-approved workout equipment during school hours. While using a neck machine, a bolt shot out of a cinder brick wall and smashed into my son's mouth, causing massive trauma. I received a phone call at approximately 7:50 a.m. from a trainer that was present during the incident, informing me that Dane needed to be picked up immediately and we needed to seek immediate medical attention. When Dane was picked up from the school, he was holding a baggie of his shattered teeth. He had an insurance form with him and was covered in blood, and of course, in a tremendous amount of pain. I took him to our pediatric dentist for cleanup and pain relief, and was then referred same day to Gray's Cosmetic and Family Dentistry for further treatment. For 7 months now, Dane has had to attend his senior year events, which have consisted of football games, prom, graduation, spring break, work, and now summer vacation, with 3 of his teeth missing, and dentures that had to be removed in order to eat. Think about that for a second. An active teenage boy entering his senior year who had beautiful, perfect teeth, needing to step away, remove his dentures to eat with 3 missing teeth. The most important year of his young life has been tainted with this awful accident, but yet he has managed to keep a positive and upbeat attitude. His life will likely include expensive future dental issues, which is ironic since the child has never even had a cavity. I have emailed most of you, if not all of you, details of the accident, pictures, detailed letter of treatment plans from the dentist, and x-rays. I'm sure more than once. Sorry about that. I am aware that this particular equipment was installed by a volunteer and not an MISD employee or an outside contractor. I did request installation information, maintenance, and our inspection records from the Executive Director of Athletics early on, which was never produced. The bolt was not installed correctly. It was an accident waiting to happen, and an inch or two higher or lower, like his dad said, the outcome may have been very different. We may not have our son with us right now. Gray's Dentistry has been amazing and has taken Dane on as a patient from day one, with only a fraction of payment being served to them through my dental insurance and the schools, totaling $6,120. I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. To date, the payment is almost $27,000. We are just asking that y'all do the right thing for him, and just please consider his life for the next 60 years. He's 19 years old. He's going to have dental issues for the rest of his life. And I do ask that you consider that when reviewing and voting on reimbursement and cost of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Quiller. Mr. Pounds.
Thank you, President Murray. This is a resolution that would set up a framework for the district to be able to pay certain expenses in limited circumstances after the district's student accident insurance has been exhausted. There will be a number of requirements, as you can see in the resolution, before any expenditures are made. I won't read through the entire resolution, but if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask.
I make a motion to approve the resolution regarding student injury reimbursement.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Trischetti, a second by Mr. Davis. Any other discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. The vote is unanimous. The time is now 6:53. Mr. Dodds, we will welcome you back to the podium to discuss item E, 2021-2022, operating budget for the general fund, food service fund, and debt service funds.
Thank you, President Murray, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Ramsey. First of all, I'd just like to thank everyone for this past year. It was a very trying time, and they did an excellent job. You can see the increase in our academics, and that's one thing that the budget supports, and we want to thank all of our teachers, all of our principals, and all of our staff throughout the year that has done such a great job. As we move into next year, our proposed budget for 21-22 school year is revenues of $380 million, with the same expenditures for a balanced budget of $380,837,032. as discussed in the public fund, we'll also be approving the food service budget with revenues of $13,897,747 and expenditures of $15,897,747. And then also tonight we'll be approving the debt service fund budget of $21,588,629 for our debt service payments.
We have a motion by Mr. Trischetti, a second by Mr. Bishop. Any other discussion? Mr. Rhodes, I do want to ask one question about food service. Was it last year that we transferred money over from general fund over to food service?
Yes, we transferred right about $1 million into food service. Yes.
And am I correct in stating we transferred that because at the time we didn't know how the federal government was going to reimburse us for the food?
Correct.
Paying all those meals, and so we did some money, and also correct that we cannot transfer that money back to general fund without doing something on the front end of that transfer.
Correct. It actually has to be a loan agreement from general fund to food service before the school year in order to do that. So
that helps contribute to spending $2 million more this year because we've added some last year.
Yes.
That we needed to spend. Thank you.
And also as clarification, because people tie them together, tax rate and budget. We're doing budget, but tax rate we'll do in August.
Yes, tax rate we have to wait till certified values are in, and that should be July 25th when we get that. So it'll be the August regular board meeting that we will do the tax rate at that time.
Okay. Board, with no other discussion, all in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Dodds.
Thank you, Board.
At this time, the time is now 6:56, and the board will head to closed session in accordance with Government Code Section 551.071 for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney regarding pending or contemplated litigation and any or all subject matter authorized by the law, and 551.074 to deliberate the appointment, employment, and evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of public employee, officer, or employee. Thank you for being here. We do not expect to have any other action arising out of closed session, so if you are available, you're free to leave at this point. If you want to stay and wait for us to adjourn, you're free to do that also. Thank you. The time is now 8:03, and we are emerging from closed session. There is no action arising from closed session, and we will adjourn also at 8:03. Thank you.